Working Class Frame Rate. I'm your co-host, Josue and Austin, here with my co-host.
Dude, Austin, what's up, y'all?
I'm here with my boy. We have seen Evil Dead Burn. I saw this a week earlier. My boy Austin, you
Yeah,
just saw it
without me.
last night. And we have conflicting thoughts. And it's always exciting to get a conflicting thoughts episode. This one kind of bums me out because I love the Evil Dead franchise. I think we both share a deep appreciation and love for the Evil Dead franchise. And even with Rise, I was not a huge fan, but I've come away appreciating it a little bit more. Not as much as the others, but listen, I was not a fan. My boy Austin here was, and let's start off with the positives. Austin, you watched this last night. You went with our boy Keenan. What are you
I
thinking
did.
about Evil Dead Burn? What makes Evil Dead Burn a worthy addition to the franchise? Let's start there.
I just think it's like a solid visceral gut punch. I was mentioning last night that it sort of evoked the era of the early 2000s involving apt because it's a French director, but the French New Extremity with films like
Right.
Inside and Martyrs. And I just thought it was a really well crafted gore fest, and I think it has a lot to say as well. I don't think it's completely meaningless or vapid. I had a really good time with it, and I think in a lot of ways it also delivers visually on a lot of gags it sets up. I think a lot of the threads in the script start in the beginning and flow to the very end in a way that I wasn't expecting for an Evil Dead film. And I know you had a bigger problem with some of the decisions involving like the impact of the violence and all that, but it landed for me. I thought it really went there and got vicious when needed to.
I want to say too, I'll start off with some of my highs. I did really enjoy some of the cinematography in this movie. The way that what I think also pained me was the cool cinematography is shown explicitly in the trailer, which is kind of a downside because what a
Yeah.
treat that would have been to see that for the first time in theaters. But the shot with the mirror where the girl is smashed into the mirror and then tossed back, there's like a split cut where it just kind of like inverses, and which I thought was fucking crazy and I had a crazy response to it watching in theaters as well. And then the entire choking scene in the bathroom was pretty gnarly, pretty gnarly. I had a great time watching that in theaters. Um, there was a couple of things that I also enjoyed. I think Suhelia is incredible. She's known to be a
Hmm.
fantastic actor. She's in Dune Part
Climax.
2 and she's in Climax. Yeah, 100%. Both which she delivers fantastic performances. She stands out. Other than that, maybe I'll give some flowers to the dad, but some CW
The,
level acting for me where
no,
I was just like, bro, put
that
him.
dad rips.
The dad was fine.
He was
The dad was
great.
good. The dad was good. The dad was good. I'll give you the dad was good. The friend boyfriend, the one that's brought to that family, bro. Oh my god, CW level actor. Get him on daytime TV, bro.
Yeah, the brother, right? Who's like he sucks.
Yeah.
He's kind of a coward. Yeah, I think it worked for his character because usually in that movie they would take an incompetent loser like him and try to turn him into something heroic, and he fails utterly until the end. And I love that. And the Deadites really sort of sink their teeth into him.
Yeah, I think I just hated his acting. I thought his acting was
Fair.
actually it took me out so many times, dude. Just not a movie, not a performance I will ever want to revisit. And then I think what was worrying me, especially walking into this movie, was the gray palette. I was not excited. I thought like maybe it'll work in the theatrical experience, the gray look to this movie. And Jesus fucking Christ, like it just looks like dog shit to me. Like I felt like I was looking at dirt like the whole movie. And there's times where like it even kind of makes the scene worse because I'm not able to see the action because of how dull it looks and because of there's no contrasting colors or any sort of contrasting vibrance to allow me to see the hell is happening in these action sequences. And my friend pointed it out also in the movie as we were watching it after we watched it that this feels way more akin to an action film as opposed to a horror film. And I also agree in compared it to more of a World War Z than to an Evil Dead franchise because even in the Evil Dead franchise tie-ins, I felt like we get the book reading, there's a little bit of lore about the knife, and that's pretty much it. This could just be a fucking possession movie. There is nothing else to this movie that really adds on to the Evil Dead franchise. And that's another gripe that I had with this movie because at least with Evil Dead Rise presented new lore add-ons, like new lore expansion that only had me intrigued and with more questions. For example, there is the whole story about how the priests were conjuring up these deadites and trying to battle them, and they were doing these what is the word Catholic exorcisms. They were doing
Mm-hmm.
exorcisms on these deadites, and it was like a bloody battle, and they talk about this story in Rise, and I found it to be so interesting, and I was like, where is that movie? I want that movie, but it would add to the lore. There's a lot of connection to Evil Dead, and Evil Dead Burn has that book, has the knife, right? And then there's like this like loose mention of the newspaper, like, oh, the four teenagers who were killed, like a loose like connection to the Evil Dead 2013, which I found to be so fucking lame. I don't think the domestic abuse angle is really handled with care, and I put it in my letterbox review. I would have rather them not try to talk about this at all because the movie starts off with these themes of her being in an abusive relationship, and then he is finally rid of this world and she's able to survive that
Mm-hmm.
relationship because of his death. And I almost completely forget about that storyline until the very end when she's battling this Terminator head ass looking demon. And it almost looks like the budget fucking ran out for that last final scene. And she uses the drill hammer to like kill him, which I found to be also extremely fucking lame. And then the
Really?
ending scene with the paramedic, and she was like, "Who did this to you?" I was like, oh, that's right. Like this is a tie into like domestic abuse, a storyline and a plot line that we just kind of forgot about, and we're trying to tie that in for I guess to make the audience feel something when all I kind of feel is kind of disgust that you use this as a plot device and don't bother to explore it any deeper. And I'll go more into that and how I feel like it's sort of they try to loosely tie it into their family relationship and their parents. But I want to know, I've said a lot, I've kind of ranted on here, but what are your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts here about what I've said? And do you have any sort of, you know,
Yeah, see, I feel the exact opposite. I think I like the fact that it feels the least Evil Dead. Because, see, I think Evil Dead Rise suffers from a lack of identity. I think it's nothing more than a sterile conjuring of old dead tissue from a franchise. Like, because, you do mention that, like, oh, it doesn't explore some of these themes deep enough. I don't really think Rise does very much to explore anything. It mentions the lore, but, like, to me, I go to Evil Dead for a ride. Like I want to feel the survival and I want to feel that intensity as it rises. And I felt like for this story for me, cause see, I disagree. I think the domestic abuse stuff, well, whether you want to say it's handled tastefully, I get that. That's a totally different discussion. But I think it chooses to opt for a more emotional route rather than a cerebral one, like logical, where the entire movie you feel like you are in this woman's shoes and she is in this suffocating house with these enabling parents. And I loved how the Deadites were sort of used symbolically to sort of represent them. And even the mother character I thought was so interesting, where like she, once again, as someone who enables her evil son, she enables the Deadites. And there's that great scene where she makes out with the fucking zombie husband, and it's so
yeah,
gross. I really liked that it felt also really intentional with the Deadites where they didn't just get summoned. They are there on a mission. And I really liked the aggravated, like, home intruder angle where they're like, look, there's something in that fucking house. We're going to get it and we're going to fuck you
yeah.
up while we do it. And I don't know. I just think as like a sort of chaotic roller coaster, it just worked for me. And now I agree with you on some of those discussion points. Like, I agree that the palette does kind of suck. I think it fits the gloomy tone, but like it's not visually appealing. And there are times where it does look. I think of that scene where they're fighting in the room and the lights like strobing, and I was like, oh, this is a fucking aneurysm. Like, it looks bad. I think there's a lot of cool shots. Like, not even just those two you mentioned. Like when the mom's laying her face on the radiator and it zooms into her eyes, it pans and then pulls back. And then I love that scene where she's laying on the floor and it goes upside down. And I know you called them like a Terminator T-1000, which I don't know. I was so enamored with the tone of it and that it was just it was throwing everything at the wall that, like, when we saw the shitty like CGI Terminator, man, I was like, I'm on board. Like, I don't know. By that
Okay.
point, I had sort of bought into it.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I think my main gripe, especially when it comes to the color palette, and this tends to happen a lot, right? Whenever a movie looks like shit and it's like a gloomy movie,
Mm-hmm.
people tend to be like, "Oh, that's the point. That's the point. It's supposed
Yeah.
to look. It's supposed
And I
to look
won't
like
drop that on
dog
you.
water. It's supposed to look like dog water." And I know you're not saying that, but this tends to be a lot of people's arguments, right? And I've seen plenty of movies that have given me this gloomy atmosphere that end up looking cool, that end up like committing to this gloomy atmosphere that brings me down. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think of immediately like Alien, right? Such a cool setting, but there's moments in that scene where I could see stuff, but it feels gloomy, it feels terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And even if we want to go into this franchise, there's stuff in the Evil Dead 2013 that looks and feels grimy and nasty and just there's
Yeah.
so much cool imagery in Evil Dead 2013. And even in Evil Dead Rise, I would argue that although it is rehashing a lot of nachos, I will give its credit. Like there's a lot of striking imagery. Again, when she's in the elevator and she gets possessed, that shot is crazy. That scene is crazy. One of the best openings to the Evil Dead franchise, which unfortunately that's where a lot of the movie peaks, is the beginning. But then I also think about the shot through the looking through the door, the eyeglass. That was a lot of fun
Yeah.
too. And even though I do wish we could have seen a lot more of the violence, I do appreciate
Mm-hmm.
that shot too. There's a lot going on in Rise that I failed to give credit for in the beginning. Um, and I do think that it does expand a lot on the lore and in Evil Dead Rise and Evil Dead Burn. Not that the movie needs to expand on lore. I'm not really looking for lore.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun when it comes. I just do feel like because this movie does feel so strangely disconnected to Evil Dead, that I just kind of like found myself like not wondering what its purpose was in this franchise. Because again, if we're going for brutality, I could check out Evil Dead 2013. If we're going for comedy, then we could have some of this stuff from Evil Dead 1 and 2 and even Army of Darkness.
Fair.
And that's another thing. The grandma, fucking annoying, bro. I thought the grandma, like the jokes in the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, funny. As the movie kept going on and it was the same fucking joke, I was like, all right, bro. All right, wrap this up.
I agree with you. It went on too long. I would even argue, like, I think there's a creativity to the Deadites in this one, and like I loved how flamboyant so much of the violence got. Like, it's really kind of silly, but I love the part where he's like blowing his brains out in three different ways, and it's got that weird song playing over it, and like that's
I
my
was
thing. Where like,
wondering, yeah,
well,
I
no,
was
I
wondering
just
if
like,
that was on purpose. I wonder if that was like supposed to be funny or if that was supposed to
yeah,
be
I
dark.
think so.
I don't know. I don't think the tone was nailed there for me to understand, or at least, or maybe I'm a dumbass, Like maybe it was just supposed to be funny because like the consistent blow to the brains was just
Dude, and then
like
it
I was like,
cuts
all right,
back and he's
bro.
like, and he's just like doing it again. Like, that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying too, is like, I love the Deadites. And I think they're
yeah,
such an intriguing set of horror characters because they're just kind of these hedonist little monsters that just do fucked up shit. And
yeah.
I really thought this film kind of gravitated towards that sadistic energy where, because in Evil Dead Rise, like, especially with that like final boss just being like an amalgamation of flesh, I loved that the Deadites in this were sort of punishing, and like how the one that brings them all together is the abusive boyfriend, and the fact that they bring that thread back where the Deadites would tell her like, "Oh, why didn't you leave? Why didn't you leave?" And like the way
Mhm.
they just played upon her pain and that guilt, I really just felt like it got gruesome in a way that, granted, is physically brutal. And I kind of disagree with you where you say like the impact doesn't last, because the whole movie to me I felt like I was stuck in this fucking rotten sarcophagus with this girl, and she's just like,
Yeah.
"Bro, I don't even wanna be here. Like, fuck this guy," you know? And I
Yeah.
love that final line, how it came together, and I think this is the moment the movie won me over, is when he says, "I love you" to her at the end, and she just says, "That's not enough," and, like, she just lets him go. With a lesser director, so many of those points would have just been really on the nose. Like, I like how the opening isn't even them, like, fighting physically. Like, I feel like a lesser director would have had him, like, hit her in the opening scene, and instead, it's more of an uncomfortable conversation where you're sort of by osmosis absorbing that dysfunction, and you're like, "Oh, it's really killing the energy of this party because it's, like, kinda disturbing." It's definitely not perfect, but I think in a way where Rise takes no swings, and I think ultimately it's safe. I think Burn really went for the hills with it, and whether it lands for you or not, obviously, is going to vary.
Yeah.
But I just like kind of appreciated that it was like this weird French director just doing like his own alien take, a la like Alien Resurrection, another French director doing his weird take. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was unique to me, and but I can totally understand a lot of your points, and I'm sure on a rewatch, some of those like blaring issues will come forth a little more. But
Yeah.
as I just felt like when I was in that seat, and obviously there's a bias because it might also have just been the crowd energy, where
Yeah.
I was on board, and I had a good time, and I really liked that it didn't pussyfoot around a lot of the tougher subjects.
Yeah, I wish it went a little bit deeper. I did appreciate
Fair.
that makeout scene for a lot of people, might come off as just weird and gross. To me, that makeout scene was kind of like pivotal. I found it to be kind of heartbreaking, and I think that's where I was starting to settle into the themes a little bit more, and reason why I didn't absolutely hate this movie. But I found that to be so interesting because to me, I saw a daughter in that mother, a
Mhm.
daughter with her dying mother, as it's almost like she is trying to break free of her own abusive relationship, and her
Mhm.
mother welcomes her with open arms, and it's a very, very sad situation. And the husband comes around knowing that he's possessed, knowing that he's evil, and he knocks on the window saying like, "Open up," and she does, and she kisses him and
Mhm.
she embraces him. And I think it's very interesting to prolong on that makeout scene because for a lot of people that scene is like disgusting, and we know he's evil and we know it's bad,
Mhm.
but she's ready and willing to go back. And this happens so much in so many toxic relationships
Mhm.
where everybody's like, "Please, like, don't go back, like, don't do it," and they just go back. And it's like you feel bad and you feel sad, and that's what I felt in that moment. I just felt
Mhm.
sad for her, and the cycle
Yeah.
continues, and our lead character is the only one to really break free out of that, and I'll point to what you're saying, especially with the ending about her saying him telling her, "I love you," which was just manipulation, She's saying, "That's not enough," is perfect. Like, it's perfect, to say that to someone, especially because, like, yeah, a lot of people in abusive relationship, whether they be man, woman, non-binary, queer relationships, people stuck in abusive relationships saying "I love you" as a way to kind of heal things and move on is sort of a response to whatever bad happens, as opposed to taking about accountability and actually changing. It's really hard to break free from abusive relationships. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I think that is a great ending line. I wish I liked that scene a lot more, and I wish I
Fair.
could feel the impact of that scene. Like, I wish I was like feeling like the angst and the fun of this scene, and like the gravity of who this abusive piece of shit is. And I get that's what the movie was trying to convey. It just didn't click with me. It just didn't click with me.
Mhm. No, and this is completely understandable, and, like, I will say, like, I don't think all the humor lands, but it's this
Yeah.
movie's so weird to me because, like, some of the humor, like the grandma doesn't land, but some of the line delivery I love. Like, I always think of when she's on top of him on the dishwasher with all the knives, and there's that great line where she says, like, "Oh, you couldn't shoot your father, but you can kill me." And like little things that the Deadites would say to them where I'm like, "Oh, I wasn't even thinking about
Kind
that,
of
but
fucked
now
up.
you're making me." Yeah, like and I think that personality really shines a lot, where it's like them just kind of tinkering with them. And also, we have
Yeah.
to talk about the gore too, because like, dude, I'm sorry, that scene where he's smashing the head in with the like little stool ladder, that
Yeah.
maybe it's the barbarian in me, but I just at that point I was like, come on, I love this. This is good. The ear, the just the weed whacker. I don't know. And then that car scene, even though it's low key edited nuts, like the
Dude,
editing of that it's like haywire. But I
I
liked
like
the
that's it's one of the biggest things I've had a problem with is the action, and this seems to be now a problem we're running into again. I thought we were straying away from that after John Wick 4, but I guess the fuck not. And we just got the Furious to edit your action
yeah.
sequences in these frivolous fucking cut after cut after cut. Can I see the fucking action, bro? Can I please see the action? Like, it seems like there was a lot of time and effort put into that scene. I don't know why we had to cut every fucking 3 seconds, bro. I didn't even get to see the impact of the car head seat like slamming in. Like, could I have not had a little peek at like the pop through? Like, that would have been crazy. That would have been
Yes.
crazy. And this goes to my point about a lot of the action here. The head bashing scene, in my opinion, I feel only feels as heavy as it does is because it goes on for as long as it does. And I feel like with, for example, the 2013 Evil Dead and a lot of the great gore movies, is that great directors have a lot of great coverage on the impact of the violence. They'll make sure that they're communicating the harsh feelings and the pain of these characters through the editing, through the sound effects, making you feel like I very distinctly remember the sound of the nail gun in Evil Dead 2013. Not only the sound of the nail gun, but the sound of it landing inside of his skin and then seeing it and hearing him scream and then close-ups of him trembling. Like, we're meant to feel and sit with that moment. Like, seeing him bash her head in over and over again and hearing the squish was pretty aggravating. It was heavy. I feel like it could have been even worse. Like, that shit should have traumatized me.
Really?
That shit should have traumatized me,
But
and I
see,
don't
like
think it
I think
did.
it's
Like,
more sorry,
I would
finish.
argue I would argue that the fucking head bashing scene in Obsession is worse than that one. Like, that one goes on, and I think that I think that's akin to the characters and how attached we are to them. Because of the character
Mhm.
writing in this movie being so thin, I don't really give a shit about what is happening. And again, we don't
Mhm.
need crazy good characters if the action and the gore was being shot in a way that made me feel the intensity of it, but we're not.
Well, see, I think it's funny though because like I I think honestly I like the characters in this more than 2013. Now, granted, let me hold on, let me add a caveat.
I'm listening.
I don't think they're more interesting than the main girl. I think she's one of the best characters in the entire Evil Dead franchise. But the side characters in Evil Dead 2013, I don't really think they hold as much thematic weight as I felt like Edgar, the dad, the mom, with their own sort of intertwined relationship with this family and their history, especially with the grandpa and everything, and how the evil is literally at the core of it. Like they're a rotten people. And I do feel like the fidelity of 2013 and how it's shot, the editing, way more impactful. But there's such a spasm of just nihilism in this that I think it for me at least, I really felt like I could just like taste the termites in this house, and like I felt like it was just so ugly. And I feel like in a strange way the nauseating feeling that I was getting was coming from the fact of just how bleak this situation was. And
Mhm.
I felt like, at least with 2013, there was at least this hope. Like, you really want her to get out of this situation because she's struggling, drug addiction. And I felt like for Alice, I felt that same level of weight where it's like, you're in this house that is alienating to you, and everyone, the Deadites and the parents, hate you. Everything is against you. And I felt like the dynamic of the family was really interesting. And I felt like it didn't beat 2013 to me, but this is the closest I've felt to that dragon I've been chasing with 2013 being filled.
Interesting. Interesting. How did you feel about the grandma and the humor in her jokes? I think
Yeah.
we touched about this a little bit earlier. I didn't really mind it. I found it funny at times in the beginning, but after a while, I started to dread it. And I do want to make a little bit a quick point, and I've been talking about this a lot too. A lot of the great humor and comedy to Evil Dead is
Mhm.
the silliness to it. Like, it's so silly, especially in the first 2, how the Deadites are joking around with Bruce Campbell and how they fuck with him. It's like it's
Mhm.
fucked up, but it's so funny. It's so funny. And
It's like
it's
paranoia.
slapstick humor. Yeah, it's slapstick humor and it's great. And not that we need that again. There's different ways of exploring comedy in any movie. But I feel like this was a cheap approach to comedy that I feel
Fair.
like will work for mainstream audiences, but what did you think?
I was gonna say you're forgetting about one of the funniest, most random jokes in the movie is the funeral guy dancing to some rap music. Like, I actually
Um,
thought, well, and then the funeral where like that fuck ass funeral with the construction site happening in the background, and then like he's like pushing the coffin off the stage and it's like getting stuck. Like, I thought that was really funny, and I even think like
mm.
some of the later jokes from the Deadites, and I'll get to the grandma right now. But,
Sure, sure, sure.
like,
No, go ahead, go ahead. I like this.
one of my favorite bits is when she has all the knives in front of her and she's, like, stabbing the Deadite, and he's like, "That's not the right one," and he just keeps crawling in slower and slower, and he finally gets the right one, and it transitions back to serious where he's like, "Oh," and he falls. I was like, I think there's a silliness to that, and even when she looks through the hole and you see that really terrible CG add-in where, like, the face is like, "Ah," like, I don't know. It felt like it was being pretty funny, but I will say
Okay.
the grandma. I think the problem with that joke is it just goes on too fucking long. To add for the context for the story to the audience, there was this guy sitting right behind me who this was the first movie he'd ever seen in life. He became conscious that day. So every time that grandma joke would happen, he would like belly laugh like ah, and I'm just like, dude, it's not that funny. And I will say, to give credit where it's due, they do kind of bring it back to a crescendo with her and the leg as a weapon. But
Yes.
even then, it still goes on after that. And I was like, okay, I get it. Like, enough of the fucking grandma joke. I agree with you. That shit wore itself thin. And even some of the, like, pacing, I will admit, if I had to go into the negatives for a second, I think there is a problem where, like, I think sometimes it really hits a stride where it's like, okay, boom, let's get this ride going. And then it kind of stops for a little bit and they're like, okay, like, you need to go find something. I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm like, we've already shifted the paradigm into crazy mode. Like, stop trying to go back into, like, plot mode. You know what I mean? Like, just keep
I, I
going.
think I think that was one of my issues too. Like I wouldn't have I wouldn't have cared too much if it was just going. If it was just going. But those stops
Hmm.
and these moments to try to flesh out the story and the substance of what he was trying to say really like I got a peek into how I didn't like the script. I was just like, "Oh, that's right, like, we're doing this, and it's trying to tell this story about, like,
Yeah,
generational trauma, and it's also trying to talk about domestic abuse." I was like, "Bro, like, this is not landing. I don't even think it's written that well." And, to end off in the way that it does made my eyes roll, made my eyes roll. Like, I was like, "Alright, bro,"
fair.
like,
No,
it's fine.
and I will
Um
say, compared to some of the other writing I've seen in films this year, like Obsession and Backrooms, it's not touching those. Like, I will say this, like, I'm being realistic in that respect, where like I will not be disingenuous and be like, oh, this was like the most masterful dissection of intergenerational trauma. But I do think it has moments where I think it's delivered intentionally, and I don't think it completely misses for me.
Yeah. I mean, regardless, I'm showing up for the Evil Dead Wrath movie next year. Evil
Oh,
Dead
I'm down.
franchise as a whole, like, I still have so much love and appreciation for, and I really can't wait to rewatch Rise. I'm excited to rewatch. If you're down to rewatch, let's rewatch.
Dude, I'm down
Um,
to run all of them. Maybe that'll be
yeah,
a future episode.
they're just so much fun, bro. I really, really enjoy the Evil Dead franchise as a whole. I've been hearing
Mhm.
amazing things about Wrath, so I'm gonna be there when it comes out. Evil Dead Burn is easily my least favorite out of the bunch.
Really
I think back to
interesting.
Rise with a lot more favor than Evil Dead Burn. I'll tell you that. Um, Again, watching Evil Dead Burn, I was just like, damn, dude, I wish I was watching Rise. Like that's what I was thinking. Um,
Whoa.
and one last point, that one
Mhm.
shot scene would have been so cool if the depth of field was actually in focus. We were in shallow focus. I wish we could have seen what the fuck was happening in that one shot. It was already happening. It was just focus on her and not what was happening. Like, how cool would it have been to have everything in that fucking frame? Man, what a missed opportunity. But look, Evil Dead Burn, my least favorite of the franchise, does not mean I'm out. Does not mean I'm out. Shout out Evil Dead. Shout out Evil Dead. One of my favorite franchises still, even though Evil Dead Burn is one of my least favorite. Austin, what are your concluding thoughts here?
See, Evil Dead, it brought me back. Like, I'm gonna be real. If we're going in this direction with the franchise where they're just gonna start really letting directors let their free candle fly, I'm in. It's funny because after watching this, I had the exact opposite reaction. I was like, I never need to watch Rise again. I finally got my new Evil Dead film that I love. And granted, I'm still gonna go back to watch Rise because this whole discussion's kind of rekindled my interest in checking it out. But I don't know. I had a great time. I thought it was just a splendid little monstrosity, excuse me. And I'm really excited for Wrath because I think I've had such distinct reactions to Rise and Burn that I'm really
Yeah.
excited to see this streak continue and see what other filmmakers add to the franchise.
Yeah, I'm excited. We've got a lot more stuff coming out for you guys. I wish I was excited about this movie as much as you were, Austin. But you know, it is what it is. I don't know
It
if
is
we
what it
have.
is.
Do we have any other horror movies on the horizon? You know what I would really love to talk about on this on the podcast. We should talk about the Samurai and the Prisoner. You know, we take a little bit
Oh,
of a
yeah.
detour. Yeah, you know,
I mean,
that would be a
you
lot
could
of
say it's
fun.
horror coded from a
For
horror
sure,
director.
for sure, for sure.
I would love to
Maybe if
talk
you're down,
Kurosawa.
we can totally do I Want Your Spider Sex Prisoner triple feature.
Dude,
You know.
I'll run it. I'll run it, dude. You know me, I'll
Uh,
run it.
you know. All right, guys. Listen, working class roommate. Thank you guys so much for tapping in. OG versus remake coming very soon. I'm excited for you guys to check that out. For now, we're signing off. We're working class roommate. I'm your co-host, so Swatiano, with your co-host.
Austin,
We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
sayonara.